My parliamentary colleague and long-standing acquaintance Bob Blackman, ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to accept your kind invitation. I must confess to you, ladies and gentlemen, that on the back of Canwaltour referencing the majority with which I entered the House in 1997 causes me to bring back into my mind the experience of one of my earliest conversations in the House with an esteemed and long-serving colleague. I had gone, colleagues, into the members' tea room. I was accompanied by Bernard Jenkin, who had been elected 5 years prior to me, and who of course continues to serve in the House until this day. Bernard and I were and are friends. I sat with Bernard at a table at which other colleagues were present, including a number of senior denizens of the House, whom I recognized, but whom I did not know. Bernard, in a bid to hasten my passage, or to smooth it with colleagues, immediately alighted upon the honourable gentleman, the member for Louth and Horncastle, namely Sir Peter Tapsell, who was, I think it is fair to say, immersed in his copy of the Daily Telegraph. And Bernard said to him, "Peter, I wish to introduce to you one of our new Conservative colleagues, John Bercow. He's the new Member of Parliament for Buckingham," etc., etc. It has to be said that Sir Peter did not take an obvious, still less an intense interest in what was being said to him, scarcely looking up from the newspaper column, which was evidently of rather more pressing concern. But eventually, Peter did kindly deign to raise his eyes, and he looked at me with quite a forbidding expression etched upon the contours of his face, and he said to me, obviously not having taken in what Bernard had said, "What is your name, young man?" "John Bercow," I replied. He said, looking suitably unimpressed. "And which constituency, pray, do you represent in this House?" "Buckingham," I replied. He responded, still looking pretty unimpressed. "And pray, with what majority were you elected?" he said. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, friends, a tad too quickly, without pause for breath, I replied, 12,386, sir, to which he immediately responded, "Young man, in the present circumstances of the slaughter that we have just suffered at the polls, courtesy of the electorate, that majority borders upon the vulgar." And I realized after that I probably shouldn't say too quickly or with too much enthusiasm just how large a majority I enjoyed, because Conservatives had at that election been decimated. Thank you for reminding me of that awkward first encounter with Peter, upon which subsequent conversations represented a marked and I think sustained improvement. I must tell you that it is a huge pleasure to be here tonight in your company at this venue on what is undoubtedly an auspicious and a reverential occasion to celebrate, and celebrate really is the right word, to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Asian Lite, which, let us face it, and by this sentiment we shall all tonight be united, has become such an important and impressive institution, not least, Aziz, thanks to your stewardship in the editorial chair. The breadth, sir, as well as the depth of the people who are here today speak volumes for what has been achieved in a relatively short period of time, and I know that everyone here assembled wishes you the very best indeed for the next 10 years of your successful journey. My visit to you does not, I suspect, enjoy quite the profile, the glamour, or the relevance of the William and Kate tour of India. But I hope that in a small way, friends, it represents recognition by the House of Commons, by my colleagues, by all of us there assembled irrespective of party, of the importance of India and of those of Indian origin in the United Kingdom today. Friends, birthday parties and lengthy speeches are not natural bedfellows, so I do not intend to detain you unduly with my remarks. I have been asked, as you have just been reminded, to reflect on the theme of democracy in the new media landscape. The sometimes volatile relationship between politicians and the press means that one might address this subject much as Gandhi performed in a different context. Some of you will recall, others may learn for the first time, that when he was asked what he thought of Western civilization, he replied that he thought it would be a very good idea. I will resist that temptation. I will instead, if I may, offer to you 3 simple, but I hope relevant thoughts on this matter. The first, friends, is about the sheer pace of change and the extent to which the traditional media model has been transformed by that pace, often with very considerable turbulence as part of the experience. We now live, friends, in a world in which the media, as historically understood, have to coexist with the new and emerging phenomenon of social media. It is a relationship, let us concede, frankly still in its early stages. It is anarchic as well as democratic. It is a whirlwind whose direction is unknown and uncertain. It is a truly revolutionary experience. That is often a hackneyed and sometimes perhaps judged to be a prosaic term, but in this context I think that concept of its being a revolutionary experience is not in any sense an overstatement. I would emphasize this point, friends, with the following reflections. If I had been fortunate enough to be asked to deliver a speech on the day that Asian Lite was launched, I would not have mentioned the term social media because it simply did not exist in its current context. And that was several years into my membership of the House. I very much doubt whether I would have alluded much, if at all, to smartphones or iPads, because they were either in their infancy or still embryonic, but in development, and nothing more than that. I would not have mentioned Facebook, because at that stage it was to be found in a comparatively small number of American universities. Twitter would not have crossed my mind either, as there would have been no one around to tweet about my speech, let alone indeed to retweet it. The likes of Instagram and WhatsApp were years away from finding any kind of market at all. The notion that they might become rival forms of communication to the established media would have been surreal. And I sense that anybody advocating such a proposition a decade ago would have been thought not merely to have devised and articulated a surreal concept, but to be, let us say, somewhat detached from reality, enjoying only at best a nodding acquaintance with the truth. Yet for a whole generation now, social media has become the new media, and to a very real and considerable extent, and especially for notable and large segments of the population, that new media does not merely sit alongside, but has frankly, to put it bluntly, eclipsed old media. This is a development in human society that ranks alongside the printing press, the discovery of the Americas, the industrial use of steam, the coming of the railways, or electrification. It is that huge. In truth, we are all struggling, if we're candid about it, to determine how to deal and what to do with it. The so-called new media landscape is not merely the old landscape with some different features, but rather is entirely novel. As communication is the spine of democracy, the impact of this change could not, frankly, be more seismic. Politicians in particular are not just running to stand still,